Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, olúwa mi ò dìde ojú
The Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge.
Hello and welcome to the Ashen Forge. I am Phantom X, joined as always by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are y'all doing?
Great.
Doing good.
Yeah, so we're back after a little break. Still plenty to talk about. Actually, we were going to try to wrap up events. We didn't get through all of that last time. There's been another dev discussion on respawn rates, which actually is a very interesting question. And I really don't think we talked about basic or auto attacks on cam. I could be wrong as the past dev discussion. But anyways, we got plenty of stuff to talk about. So before we get started, I wanted to ask Dig something. You've been playing a lot of New World. So what are your impressions any different now compared to when, how old is it now? 2 years? Whenever it was a year?
So they've added more, which is good. So the gameplay is fun, and there's plenty of stuff to do, which is my main issue with MMORPGs is that you run out of stuff to do, and there's always stuff to do in New World. Right now, today I've been grinding some trade skills. But my issues come in when we get to cutscenes. Even the loading screens are problematic because it's all white people in European culture. They've completely erased Native American indigenous culture so that they don't have to deal with it, which is a horrible solution. And I think I just made it to Brimstone Sands today for the first time, so I'm liking the architecture there. At least you go there and you see some non-European architecture, but I think if you were going to craft any items, they would mostly end up being colonial culture, European culture, which is problematic for me. So we get to the storyline, and it's all based on European heroes, European folklore, and I'm not trying to be European. And even when I was originally going to play New World, and when I first heard about it, I wanted to be able to be a Native American, and I wanted the map. I wanted to, it's fine to have a map that has the English or colonial names for places, but I was wanting to be able to have a map that would have the Native American names for places. And that's not a thing at all. So you do have some, the character creator is able to let you create non-European people, which is nice. But and I finally did find the storyline. It seems like they've updated it for Windsward. At least I don't remember these people, the non-European NPCs, but you can follow some non-European NPCs now that I think was not the case in 2 years ago when it released. But those non-European NPCs are trying to be European, basically, and assimilated. So it's problematic for me playing the game. Anytime I get to cutscenes or I hit the storyline and I'm like, well, no, it's a problem. But the gameplay is really nice. I'm enjoying the gameplay a lot.
Cool. I'm just curious.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad that you've been enjoying the gameplay. You were saying that you liked the new weapon, the flail, that it kind of seems just overall better than the sword or whatever you were saying. Tell me
a little
about
bit
that.
more OP. Yeah, it's a little bit more overpowered. So I have that on my alt character. And it can be fun. I kind of like the animation for the sword better in some ways, but yeah, I'm hoping to start doing some sorts of gameplay and some combat and kind of run through a storyline, a kind of side storyline of it. But yeah, I think New World is doing a great job. I just wish they would, you know, be more inclusive. They might need to have more diverse dev team for that to happen. But yeah, the gameplay is great.
Yeah, the flail is fun. I've been everywhere. I've been all over the place. New World, NMS. I mentioned I got the closed beta key for Tekken 8. I actually did install that and play some of that. Just Backpack. Oh, what's it called? Backpack Battles was another one I saw someone streaming that's currently. Anyways, I've been like in every area I could be. But we are here for Ashes of Creation. I was just curious to see how you start sort of taking some of that into what you've experienced and compare and contrast with
Yeah,
Ashes.
and it's interesting. Tangent 369 is saying in chat that they got to a burnout point, which I did too. But I was gone long enough, and there's new things to try, like the mounts are new, so there's just new stuff to do in the game, so that's making it better.
What would you say is the big part with the mounts? Like, do you feel like you really need them in the new area? Is it just a nice thing? Like, what does it add to the gameplay, or does it add to the gameplay?
It's nice. It adds to immersion. They did the horses. Like, I'm so surprised because normally I don't necessarily care too much about mounts, but riding the horse especially just feels so soothing. And I think they have the animation down and they have the sounds down. So it feels like I'm riding on a horse, which is just, I don't know, just it's a nice feeling to
terrain
be riding around on a horse.
Yeah, your speed. Because some of the charms, some of the things you can get will affect speed based off.
Yeah, and you can feel that too, which is nice. And then even going uphill, it just, well, and then I, just for my immersion, because I can get immersed really easily, is when I'm going off the road and I'm going through weeds or things that feels like there's going to be, whatever those sticker plants are going to be. I'm like, oh no, I'm riding the horse. It's going to get brambles. I feel bad running it through tall grass and stuff like that. But I have a lion for my main character because it's a more African-based character, and it doesn't feel as good as the horse because I know what it's supposed to be like to ride a horse, and then nobody rides lions, so there it feels like it's a mount, whereas the horse feels like it's a horse, which has a nice feeling. So yeah, it just adds to the immersion, kind of.
Mount skins are pretty pricey though, aren't they? They're like $15-$20 a mount. I don't know.
I mean, mounts are, it's no more expensive than a Ashes of Creation mount. I don't think so. It's okay.
Well, if you're going to use it and you like it, then I guess it's a good investment. Yeah. Anyway, once again, we are here to talk about Ashes of Creation, this game that you happen to see being played in the screen behind me.
Yeah, but there was some good tie in there because one of the things that seems nice, we haven't seen a lot of it yet, although we did see some of it in APOC, I guess, and some of the early alphas. We just haven't seen a lot of it recently, is the huts for the Nakua. So you can see different architecture, very different architecture styles. We know that that's going to be a thing in Ashes of Creation, even when you get to the Pyre and things like that. So there should be some very distinct racial differences, and some of them will be kind of real worldish. It won't be just Tudor European. We'll get some Polynesian architecture and things like that. So that should be good. I'm looking forward to that with Ashes.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of it for PAX Day, but I'm looking forward to it with Ashes.
Oh, PAX Day, I just expect it's going to be so like biblical fantasy European, like medieval, just like so much, and just like you've got to go into it just kind of thinking it's going to be to the point where it's like tropey and meme worthy. It's just going to be hilarious. So that's what I expect for it. I'm not looking at that one as like, the pinnacle of, modern Western gaming fantasy. It's just like, oh, well, if that's the theme you're going to run with, then, this is probably what it's going to look like, even though like, maybe that's not actually the areas where things were happening and where people were at when things were happening, and like, the people that were there when it was happening, whatever. And
I will say with PAX Day, part of what I do, you're right. I mean, they're pulling from very clearly defined spaces in their lore, but I also kind of like that. I kind of like that I could pick up a book and read about how to, kill something. It's a very different take on what, versus creating your whole lore from scratch. So I do find that kind of interesting. We have a whole nother show for that though. So
yeah. So combat, we were going to be talking about how combat goes and flows, and we were going to talk about how
money.
New World. Well,
see, now he's trying to pull me into a Pantheon conversation. That's what he's trying to do.
I mean, the title is money. I didn't make the title.
All right, let's do the Pantheon thing.
No, that's not. I'm still technically I don't know where I can cross lines of NDA versus stuff that's publicly out there. So,
well then don't. But like,
let's move on.
There's things going on involved with that game that money may or may not be a subject of. But we are talking about Ashes of Creation, so I'm going to double back 2 conversations ago to when we were talking about combat in New World, and extrapolate that to this whole thing about auto attack and auto attack sequences and that sort of stuff versus, more controlled and specific attacking sort of things. So
I'm going to break in. Originally, Ashes was not supposed to have auto attack. It was supposed to have basic attack, which is something that you initiate. So you're hitting the attack button each time you want an attack versus hitting attack once and then having an auto attack. So having auto attack would be something new.
Gotcha.
Question why they asked about it.
I think that is a good question, and there will definitely be some element to auto attack that I expect that there will be, not by the players who are controlling something, but when you've got your little NPC buddies that are doing this and that for you. Maybe your summoned creature casts a certain type of spell at a certain rate, and so what you're trying to do is figure out how you want to stack and overload all of the debuffs from your attacks and spells and their attacks and spells. So, how you would want to kind of deal with that sort of thing. I think another part of the question is just talking about, all the various generative systems that you're doing auto attack and you accumulate something in some form or another that you're able to utilize later in the battle. or it is one of the things that powers one of your systems. Like I go back to original WoW, how it was the rogues, I believe, that had the yellow meter that started at 100 and it would diminish. You have to keep replenishing it. Versus the fighters, I believe, there's started at 0 and it could go all the way to 100, but you're kind of using it as you build it. So it's kind of going for the same thing, but from the opposite starting point. And how you would kind of be using auto attack in those ways to generate the resources that you use to pull off your abilities. So I feel like maybe that's a little bit of what they're trying to pull out of the conversation here too.
That seems so different from auto attack to me, but I don't know again why they mentioned auto attack.
Yeah, it is weird.
Well, I
don't think it's something that we should necessarily have, but if it is, it should just be very basic.
Yeah, I don't mind auto attack just from a stupid reason. But if I'm like if I had to step away for a second and something starts pounding on me, more than having an auto attack, my character's going to start fighting back at least a little bit before I get back.
That's true. I will give you that one. Yeah, that's one good one.
And I was reading through this thread, the basic attack thing. Isn't that the original idea, Diggs? Is that would set up some sort of chain, like a combo based off of your basic attacks?
Yeah.
Which I like that idea as well. I think New World does basic attacks very well, heavy and light. Mixing that in with skilled. There was a post that rang very true to me on the forum thread. It was I don't know how you spell the name, Jimboj, Gemboj, basically saying rotations are stupid. Like, I don't want a game that has rotations that I have to learn a button smashing rotation. And I kind of
hotbar dancing. I agree with that too. I don't like hotbar dancing. It sucks.
Yeah.
And adding in sort of basic attacks to break that up and not just have these active attacks that you're just 1 3 2 1 4
or just playing the cooldowns.
Exactly. I think there were other comments about, well, we need basic attack to fit in between the cooldowns, which is better than just having all active skills all the time, but rotation the entire time. But I would like to see combat be situational, and that's where I think where basic attacks come in. So rather than just a rotation of 5 keys, like I actually have to pay attention. When is the best time to use this spell? When is the best time to use that skill?
Well, and again, I think the promise of Ashes, what the goal is for us to synergize based on what our group mates are doing, closer to the way we would play D&D. Well, and that was for EverQuest 2. That was kind of the hope of EverQuest 2, is that you'd be able to use those attacks of opportunity. What did they call those back then? That's been a long time.
Heroic opportunity.
Yeah. To bank off see what your group mates are doing, and then say, well, if they're doing that, I'm going to do this. I think that's the hope. I haven't seen a lot of that. They haven't mentioned that so much when they've played in Ashes of Creation, but I think that's the hope, is to be able to, DOP Crow is saying those heroics, people rarely use those, but I mean, it wasn't set up well in EverQuest 2, but we've had 20 years to improve that, so I'm hoping Ashes has a solution for that. But I think the idea is that, with these and with the way secondary archetypes are designed, I hope that we'll be checking to see, if our other group mates are focused on ice, then some of us can take schools that also will bank off of ice or critical hits or whatever. We can see that so that we're helping to set up stuff. I mean, I love flanking in D&D where you've got, your tank would be, in the forefront, and if you're flanking, that's going to give your rogue, criticals if they flank with them, so that you're making decisions with your group mates instead of, it's interesting because people talk a lot about playing MMORPGs as if they're single player and they don't like doing it when you solo, but you kind of do that even when you're in a dungeon or a raid. You're just single playing your rotations. You're not banking your rotations
just
off
the same thing. Everyone's doing their own rotation without paying attention to whoever. It's all about threat mitigation is what it's about.
That was actually one of the things that I kind of liked about the way that I was playing WoW back in the early days of it. I thought it was weird having 7 hotbars, but shamans had a shitload of tools, like just absolutely buckets and buckets of tools. And oh yeah, I was a Tauren, so extra HP and a free stun. Oh yeah, and I was an engineer, so I had an entire toolkit of grenades that I could throw to stun, helmets that I can charge to stun, helmets to make people throw themselves off of the edge. Yeet, bye-bye. All sorts of stuff. My favorite was watching the warlock I was messing with. I'd block a couple spells with Earthshock and maybe something else, and then they start charging their big fireball, and I wait 3, 2, 1, put my fire reflector on. Fireball comes at me, hits back at them. I take nothing. They nuke themselves. They self-nuke themselves to death right in front of me, and I dance on them. That I had way too many tools, and it let me have such a gigantic advantage. It was a brutal sort of thing. I would be taking like 2 to 3 people on at a time. The only reason why I wouldn't kill them is because one of them would be a paladin, and you just couldn't kill paladins easily. Is like the one thing I didn't have was enough burst damage to get them before they did their, I'm going to shield and be invincible and fully heal and blah, blah, blah. So, it is what it is. I'd eventually kill him, or someone else would gank him from behind. But that's maybe a little bit too many things. I like the idea of more what DCUO is giving me. I can't hotbar dance. I will go out of juice so quickly, and I'll have no abilities available when the party actually needs them. No. I'm getting in there and fighting because my weapons kick ass. They matter. They work. They do damage to bosses and enemies. They do debuffs. They let me control my range against them. I can do things that synergize with the other team members with them. It's great. That was a combat model for something that if it was just expanded to more like big time MMO sort of thing, you do more of like a fantasy focus, that would have felt great. That game's old. And some of the people who worked on that are definitely working on this, I'm pretty sure. So, that's great. That's more the combat style I like, where you've got weapon attacks that matter, weapon combos that matter. Your weapons matter. They're good. They're strong. They're not just this chintzy thing that you do to do chip damage in the middle. No, they're part of your primary attack source. You're using your abilities and your resources sparingly and in coordination with your team members or situationally. You've got 3 enemies coming. They're going to group up. Why use your AoE right now? Wait till they group up, use your AoEs. Don't just mash everything on the first dude you see and then be out of resources. That's dumb. Whack the one dude yourself. Block his attacks. Dodge out of the way. Kick him in the jimmy. Whatever. Do what you got to do to deal with this enemy, CC him until his buddies get through, and then drop all of your AoEs that are specialized to kill a group on them. That makes a lot more sense. Use your resources, use the tools, play the class. That's what I want people to do. This is not just sit there and fall asleep hotbar dancing. Those days are over. That's the MMO of old that we need to get beyond. This is the game to do it. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for here.
Yeah, and hopefully, I will say with watching Steven play. Now, I don't know if it's the best example, but with watching him play, there certainly does not appear to be any sort of rotation. It's just finding what works best for the moment, which is, I think, what everybody would like to see.
Yeah, as you can see on the screen behind me, there is definitely deliberation to how they're fighting.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully, I think
the enemies too. The enemies aren't dumb. Those rangers just stayed at a distance until someone actually addressed them. They had a good distance and a good position too.
And hopefully, part of why I think heroic opportunities they just weren't put together very well. They didn't really have much impact, so that's why they weren't used. Hopefully, status effects, the way those things get implemented, will become much more worth our time to realize or look at what our colleagues are doing, especially in the event system when you're sort of running into a group that you might not be familiar with and having to pay attention to how many healers do I have? How many mages do I have? What are they primarily casting? How can I complement that group? Hopefully it will happen.
Yeah, one of the things I think about are the different ways to root and snare and trip. Which classes can do that? And then how can you stack? You've seen that somebody's been knocked prone, so what can you do with that? How can you take advantage of that? Lots of things, I hope.
Stun lock, baby. Yeah, the early rogue stuff back in World of Warcraft.
There's one thing that I'm going to slightly tangent on. It's a game that's a bit of a different focus, made by a completely different studio with a completely different engine. It's going to be awesome, but it's not for everyone. I know people in this audience are not all the sort of folks that would play it. But one of the things that I'm really excited about and have seen an interesting sort of demonstration of is in Soulframe from the people that make Warframe. It's more of like a historic European martial arts sort of focus. And one of the things that kind of says to me is, oh yeah, you might just do a full commit drop kick to, down somebody that's, in a shield wall, and then you get back up and you start, charging at them with your big weapon, start attacking people, whatever, get close, maybe use a small weapon, maybe just grab someone, chuck them on the ground, that sort of stuff, whatever sort of goes sort of tactics. And that's one of the things that I don't know if we're going to see as much of in Ashes of Creation. It's just like straight up grappling and grabbing people and that sort of stuff. Yeah, I would like to see maybe one class at least be able to do that sort of thing. Just, you're containing people by just grabbing, stabbing them. You're, getting them from behind, getting them in a full Nelson and breaking their arms or something while somebody's shooting at them or whatever. That sort of stuff like that. It's got a bit of a place, but at the same time, I can imagine people don't like it because if you're on the receiving end of that, it's very frustrating unless everybody gets those sort of tools. That's why in fighting games, everybody gets to throw, not just one person, even if one person's really good at it in particular. It's one of the things that I'm, kind of interested in seeing a little bit more of in games, but maybe as a limited use sort of thing, like a 1, 2, 3 count is the maximum allowed to grab somebody, so there's not too much of a limit, and you can have that reducing debuff sort of thing. So if you keep grabbing someone, the time gets shorter and shorter before you kind of get on a cooldown before you can try to grab the person again altogether. That's a maybe sort of thing. It'd be interesting to see. You drop your weapon, you grab someone and body slam them. That so hurts. The ground hurts. Gravity hurts.
And I think Ashes is not quite the game for that, but it's not too different from a snare, and I'm able to trip people in New World, so there's knockdown effects. So there's some of that, right? If you can root somebody or stun, it's not that different from a stun necessarily. So there's some ways you could do that. I just don't think it's probably a combat style that's going to be in Ashes to start, but yeah.
I'm not even sure if it'd be a weapon-specific thing or if that might actually be more of like a class-specific thing that you can kind of utilize with different sort of groups of weapons. Yes, anyone who isn't a Stunlock build hates Stunlock builds. That is absolutely correct.
Curious to see that all come back. And yes, the idea of CC, that just is so, it feels almost old school at this point.
How do you think about CC as part of your weapon set instead of being part of your abilities, that you do a little bit more of your CCs and stuns from like conking people with a big hammer or knocking them down and bopping them on the head?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it fits, that, yeah. I'm trying to think how you would do some of the other stuff that we would, classic. I always go back to WoW, but polymorph and traps and saps and all the different methods. See, games just aren't built that way anymore. It's just interesting. Probably a different show, but it'll be fun to see it come back if status effects actually works like they've shown it to work. So
respawns. Do you want to talk about that now?
Yeah, so that's the latest dev question. The latest dev discussion was on respawn times. The questions were, how predictable do you like the spawn rate for general and rare mobs in open world dungeons and raid settings? And which games do you feel have done this well? I feel like it was a very simplified question because it's not that simple of an answer. You have your...
Yeah. This is what was asked by the devs?
Yes.
Yeah, that's concerning because respawns in that way or in previous games are static. And Ashes is supposed to be more dynamic. So in terms of respawns, we shouldn't be seeing static and predictable respawns of mobs. They're supposed to be changing and different so that even when you leave a dungeon, when you return, they're not supposed to be the exact same mobs doing the exact same behavior. The minions are not supposed to be exactly the same. So I would not be wanting to base respawns in Ashes off of any other game because it's supposed to be, the whole point is supposed to be more dynamic. Some of that's going to be based on how the nodes are changing and the services that are being built are going to change the what mobs are available. I would want respawning of mobs to be as minimal as possible. There should be new spawns, not respawns. New spawns, not respawns.
I get you on that. I think, that's definitely one of the goals that they've talked about, and I agree with that. And one of the first things I thought about is that I don't like the enemies just re-popping in position. Now, if you're in a graveyard, there's 100 graves, and there's going to be a limit of 5 zombies up at a time. Sure, if you sit there for 20 rotations, you'll have seen zombies come up from each set of the graves. Good job. You get like a merit or something for it. You did something cool in the world. You actually saw that every single one of those graves had a zombie, and you killed each one of them in sequence. Or maybe you start doing that for a little bit, and then it escalates into an event, and you end up killing all of them. Whatever. That's one thing. But if you're fighting enemies that are entrenched in some location and you kill a pack of them, they shouldn't just magically appear out of nowhere right back there. I like the idea that they have to have some dominion in the area, some camps, some sites that they are actually respawning from. That way, it isn't just, oh, you've killed them, and then, hey, back spawns, too bad, sucker. But instead that, okay, we can't fit through these little cracks in these walls here, but they're covered in ooze, so it's a likely chance that more oozes will fill in from here and patrol out to the locations where we've perhaps seen them before, possibly taking over some of the other locations where other enemies are at. And then at some point during the event, you find some book that finds some way to harden the ooze vent. So you go back there and you seal them up. Great. You've sealed off the oozes. They're not going to spawn from there anymore. But there's a couple more Minotaur spawn points in the area, and you didn't neutralize them. So now they're actually going to start getting more of the total enemy resources or whatever to fill back in the gaps. And now you're going to see less oozes, you're going to see the Minotaurs. And so it's the sort of thing where you'd kind of have to keep chasing down the different enemy respawn points and cutting them off if you really want to try stopping the enemies from spawning in the area. And even then, they'd be limited. They'd break through. Eventually, the oozes would come through. Maybe they'd be a different type of ooze that is immune to the barrier of the last kind that you put up. Maybe instead of Minotaurs, there's goblins that are coming out through a different set of cracks, or they're coming from deep down under dangerous places where the players would kind of instantly die if they went to, because they're dangerous, and these goblins are immune to whatever that danger is. All sorts of things like that. But I think that's one of the things that I'd really like to see, is that they actually have to spawn from some location and then return to a point. If the boss is literally just summoning, conjuring them, and deploying them out, awesome. Have them come from the boss then. Don't have them just spawn in place. You want more random fire bears that they're protecting the fire dragon? Great. Then the dragon has to make more fire bears and deploy them out. Hope they make them stronger or more wily than the last ones.
Or different. Yeah.
So that's kind of a few sorts of things that they have to return from a spawn point. They have to have some sort of control points and dominion in the area. Players potentially have some way to limit that. Maybe they also get some other things going, that they have, wait for it, respawn debuffs, that if an enemy is generated in a way that they are respawning, that they have to reappear because they're specialized, like a ghost or zombie or whatever, that has to keep re-emerging. They have a debuff for a little bit, that they get a little bit weakened, because yes, they can pop right behind you and right on top of you, but the trade-off for that is they aren't at their fullest power. So if you get ambushed by a horde of things that actually does get back up from where you killed them or whatever, or somewhere nearby, that they aren't just waiting there at full power waiting to pound you, but instead they're going to be a little bit weaker. And this isn't to make them easier to farm. That should probably also reduce the style, the quality of the loot that you're going to get until they've actually overcome that debuff. So you might want to wait a moment before you go hunt them again, instead of just clean sweep, sort of killing all of the mobs, trying to loot them all. And, they've all got their debuffs because that's just what everybody's doing right now, instead of going and fighting some tougher stuff somewhere else. So that's, and even with that, maybe the ability to destroy the body, you can do like a turn undead that'll actually destroy that body, and then different enemies can start spawning in the area for a little while. Maybe the next day, the zombies can start coming back or whatever. Unsummoning magic creatures, not even killing them potentially, just, summoners being able to dispel something out of existence if it's a summoned creature. That's then once again, that's going to make room for other enemies to come in, or it has to be reconjured by whatever source before it can come back through. Those are a lot of the systems that I'd really like to see for making a better respawn system instead of something that's just, oh, well, you stick around long enough, these enemies will just pop behind you. That instead a regiment coming from some fortified spawn point is, generated over some period of time, and then they go out and they're deployed, and they're more protected against the things that killed the ones that they're setting off to replace.
Yeah, even in a dungeon, how you can anticipate on your way out if things have respawned, where they're going to be when they respawn. It would be better if they would not respawn in exactly the same spot they were in when you went in. But I don't know if we are there yet. I don't know how easy that is to implement. We might have to wait until 2030 for that.
2030. I think this is a very complex question. More complex than how the question was worded. Because, you have common mobs, you have rare mobs, you have quest mobs, boss mobs, raid mobs. Being out in the just general space, like what's behind you now, Neuro, is very different than being in a dungeon where there are many groups trying to establish some sort of foothold. You add in land management system, and it's even more complex of really how respawns should work. That all said, my things, when I responded to this post, that was pretty simple stuff. One is, quest mobs. What I don't want to see is how some games have implemented quest mobs that are hard to find. They spawn once every 10 minutes and there's a line of 20 people. But part of this, though, I don't know how much will be intentional, because they're going to want to drum up PvP. So by making a quest mob more difficult to get to, you're going to have people fighting in order to get to it. So I think my post was something like, if it's a absolute required part of the story, getting through the story, the main sort of quest series, quest line, would really rather it not be so difficult to find quest mobs. If it's sort of something on the side, something, bigger in nature, then I can see where fighting over it would matter. But for sort of the main storytelling component, trying to not have that locked behind some sort of gate. Beyond that, my thing is with common mobs is just the world needs to feel alive. I don't care that they spawn in the same spot, but it can be random time and place, but just that you sort of take into account the number of players in the area and use that as a dynamic spawner. Because I think we've all played games where you're there you're trying to kill just bunnies and bears, nothing crazy, but you're there with 10 other people and nobody can find any of it, because as soon as one spawns, somebody kills it. That drives me crazy. But then also been in certain areas, a game that I just tested that will be coming out. You couldn't catch your breath. Things just spawned so fast. It was dead and respawn. Like you'd have to run somewhere away from where you were to try to find a spot to where you could just free up to just even check your inventory, anything, check your respond to chat. Because the number of the sheer volume of monsters that were around you and attacking you all the time. So some sort of dynamic. I just want to see a world that's alive, and that's where I want to see respawners. My favorite thing, actually, that I wish you'd see more of is really old school, and that's EverQuest, is the idea of you killing a certain number of placeholder mobs. The number might not be known, could be a variable number, but the idea being that some sort of random named NPC would show up.
I abhor that. I abhor that.
I mean, you might not necessarily know the when or the how many. It's not based on when they were last killed. The idea that a named mob can show up. You've killed enough orcs now that their leader has popped up and is coming towards you. Is essentially what it was I actually enjoyed, because you didn't always know, and the loot tables were always different too. So that also led to some very fun encounters and some fun loot. So
no, that's the worst design ever because they tell you, "Hey, go kill 20
they don't tell you.
exalted." Yeah, you get a quest that says kill 20 exalted skeletons, and you go there and you see a bunch of skeletons, and you kill 20 of them. Oh, but they aren't the exalted skeletons. You've got to kill 15 moss head skeletons to get the exalted skeletons to appear. So you think you're going there just to kill 20 exalted, but no, you've got to kill 15 times that just to get the ones that you're supposed to be, the ones in the quest. That's EverQuest.
I think we're talking about different stuff. So I'm talking about a traditional camp, not a quest. You'd be out camping.
You go and you're sent to the place.
No, it's
and
not. You're not sent to the place. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just open world. You have a camp. It could be any hill, any.
And I'm telling you what it turned into because that's what happened, and it happened in EverQuest. So it might not have started that way, but then it ended up being that way. That they would send you to those locations and give you a quest for the mobs that you think are supposed to be there, but they're not there. You've got to kill those other ones in order to get the ones that you want to spawn.
I don't know what you're talking about. So, but my point being, the idea of having the randomness of a named creature show up, I think is also something I'd like to see happen more, just out in the world.
I think Ashes will have something similar to that, right? Because we're gonna, as we saw in the last demo, this one that I think Nero is playing in the background, they get triggered. Stuff gets triggered to spawn based on what you're doing in the world.
Yeah, but that's part of the event. I'm just saying, just random encounters, just random encounters.
Events are ubiquitous, so that's all part of just regular gameplay in Ashes. Some events are smaller than others.
I don't know where the bandits actually spawn from, but they're at the very least tied to a specific bandit camp, which I would imagine with enough players and enough force, you would have the ability to overwhelm and reclaim. I would be really disappointed if everybody goes in and they take over a bandit camp or they clear out a minotaur nest, and instead of that area being now cleansed and be ready for other interactions to occur because you took everything out, well, lo and behold, the bandits just start randomly spawning in places that there's totally no bandits because you've literally killed every last one of them and walked every last square inch and investigated every last spot, and there's nowhere that they could possibly be coming from. But here they are again. You know, that's something that I think really would be a bummer. I get the idea. Everybody leaves for long enough. You can spawn some bandits somewhere at some distance that eventually start encroaching, and if they get there to the camp, they start setting up operations and respawns start occurring again. But barring that, if you just keep that place on lockdown 24/7, yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to start using its facilities and kind of keeping it in players' hands, essentially. Forcing the bandits to have to band up and make a larger force to deploy at you from afar that could be potentially intercepted on the way. That's the sort of thing that I think would be really nice to see, that it isn't just a spawn point that, you know, you can't really do anything else with, but you can actually interact with it. You wipe out the enemies, you claim it, and it becomes maybe an additional player spawn point with some facilities for a bit.
It seems possible if they can, depending on how well they can interconnect different nodes, right? You route the Highwaymen Hills bandits from the Highwaymen Hills, and then they end up retreating to some other node, region over. And why do they start showing up there? Or maybe they start spawning there and try to make their way back over to the Highland Hills. I mean, who knows? I don't know
different
how.
bandits are getting more powerful, and they vie for competition.
Or like
for
I said,
it.
but it could be refugees from the same one that you just routed. It doesn't mean that you killed them all. Some may escape and regroup elsewhere. But it depends on how intricate they can make their AI and when they want the game to release. So we'll see.
And that's where it hopefully connects into all of these storage systems. So those sorts of things do happen, to where through a series of events, we push the bandits back. They get to a point where now you do have this massive raid that occurs that might not have otherwise. And if you fail, maybe things start encroaching back out and you have to do it again before you get back. I think that's where the power of events, I think, hopefully becomes much more meaningful. The event system itself, I think, is just pretty standard. Like we've talked about this already. I mean, they exist. They've existed since Warhammer Online. They're in a fun state. But the difference there to here, yeah, I could go catch up with Neuro at a public quest site event, but it really had no change to the narrative of the world. And that's where this really, hopefully, has a lot of promise. One thing that's been brought up in the forums that I often forget or don't think about is just the whole PvP side, because we've not seen any of that. That still blows my mind that we're about to get into Alpha 2 at some point here in the next 6 to 8 months, probably. Well, 8 to 10. And we still haven't seen any demo of anything. Everything they've shown is PvE. I think part of that's because corruption's not existing yet. But anyways, in a state like Respawns, when they ask us this question, one thing that was pointed out to me when I talk about keeping the world feeling alive, well, really Intrepid kind of has a reason, an incentive to keep things low, so that people fight, so that you actually get that PvP component. So it's just a very complex question. I almost wonder when we talk about land management, I think of trees and herbs and stuff, probably, bear and other animals that will need for harvesting and whatnot. I imagine that system could apply to other NPCs. I mean, wouldn't you think, when we talk about bandits, this idea that over killing a certain group of NPCs, changes the area. And over time they come back. I assume that system is usable for just general NPCs as well.
Yes.
Well, we are getting towards the end of our time. We got like 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that.
I actually will say one thing on that is it could be that they just don't have the PvP values balanced quite yet, that they don't have the damage players do to each other balanced out the same way they do the damage to NPCs. I don't know what their attribute model is and how it works, so that could just be a part of it right there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
October dev stream is supposed to be about caravans, right?
So we should see PvP in it. We would hope so, and not just NPCs attacking the caravan.
I mean, the last one was PvE caravan, technically. So they could do it PvE. But hopefully, if it's caravans, that means we'll see PvP caravans. Maybe you'll get your wish.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm just very curious about that, since it is half of the game. It's PvX. Everyone says that. It's like, all right, we've seen tons of PvE. Where's the X part? I assume you're probably right. No, there's probably a lot of balancing, what armor penetration and these sorts of hit and all this stuff that they probably are still working through the numbers on. I still also think we've never actually seen corruption either. So I still wonder. I mean, that wasn't in Alpha 1, so wasn't in APOC. So We've not seen it yet. I want to see a showcase on that. Do you think it'd be worth a showcase? I feel like it's a big system, right?
I think they should showcase it in as part of like a larger system that they want to demonstrate.
PvP?
Yeah, that one. Well, either PvP or just talking about how the the death penalty mechanics are going to work in general, and then that would be
because we won't see it here, right? Caravans, because everything's going to be opted in, so there's just going to be no chance to see corruption here.
Right. But I'm curious to see how many players will be involved with the caravan. If we're seeing attack and defense, I mean, we might not be seeing attack and defense, but it could just be generally building a caravan and what it takes to build a caravan and get it running or rolling, or there could all kinds of stuff they could do for a caravan demo. That's not necessarily PvP, but if it
allegedly
is PvP,
they would have NPC mercenaries too, right?
Yeah,
eventually.
I think this is all going to where we're not going to see any PvP. I think Diggs is dead on. I think we'll probably get shown the caravansary. We'll get shown how you obtain the things you need to obtain in order to start it. The system of starting the caravan itself, and they'll probably show it moving through the world. Maybe it gets attacked by NPCs and they defend it against some NPCs, because that can happen as well. And then just getting to an endpoint.
Because we only have 3 primary archetypes. So I'm just imagining it'd be 3 against 3, 4 against 4. What would PvP even look like? So I don't know. We will find out next week.
Yeah, I will say, Dow mentions Red Dead Online. I think you. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the game. This has come up another place where caravans. I can't remember what game it was. They're in development talking about it. I think this will become a pretty common system if it works well for transporting goods. So, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like it would be very easy just to let your colleagues just start killing each other. I don't know why we don't get to see it. Just turn on friendly fire and say, go for it. I would like to see that. I would be very curious to see how that ends up. This whole paper, rock, scissors method that supposedly is going to exist. I don't know. It'd be fun I think it'd be fun to see. So. All right, we're about out of time. Anything else? Yes, that live stream, they will be on the 31st, actually, Halloween stream. So that is a Tuesday, so we will actually have a show in between. Although we're still trying to get back to a PAX Day show. A lot of stuff to talk about there. Their whole zone system is just gonna break me. Ashes of Creation and Steven have.
They don't have classes, so it'll be perfect for you.
They have. Steven has really ruined me with this idea of if you can see it in the distance, you can run to it without any load screens. And so seeing PAX Day go to a zone essentially is hard. But anyways, so yes, we are about out of time. I guess we are out of time. So. I'm just going to say it. Diggs tried to get this out of me earlier. The show title was money based off of the idea. Actually, I was listening to Pink Floyd, but MMORPGs cost money, and sometimes people run out of money. And I think what you get from that says a lot about the game itself. And there has been, it's public knowledge at this point. They've acknowledged that there was a leak, not me, posted about Pantheon and its sort of financial state and the need to create an extraction type game, which has just left me in a not really good headspace with Pantheon. And that's probably all I should go into right now. But I have never heard of an MMORPG extraction combo. I think they're 2 very different groups of players. And so I don't know how one benefits the other than, well, anyways. So Yeah. Any last words?
Nope.
Money. That's the title. That's the show.
I'm sticking to it.
All right. Well, everyone have a great week, and we will be back here next Sunday. Yeah. Hopefully we will get to talk a little bit more about Caravans and what we expect. It's always fun. We get to go over the questions beforehand that people post. And we really got to get in the habit of, after Steven answers the question, seeing if we were close to his answers or not. We got to get better about that. So everyone have a great week, and we will see you next Sunday.
Sounds good. See you later, everybody.